Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to a few quality moments with the Rabbi's son around the Shabbat table. It is my honor each week to come to you and spend a little bit of time on the Sabbath discussing the wisdom protocols of the Creator of the universe. We are on a quest, and that quest is designed to find, to know, to come to understand, and to surrender to the will of the Creator of the universe for mankind, for His creation. And we have a book, we have a material, we have a course book that teaches us how to do these things, and that is called the Torah. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Genesis, or the foundation point, the wellspring out of which the wisdom flow all comes. So what you are getting to participate with me, I'm participating with you. We're both on the quest. We're on this quest together with millions across the world and with millions across the generations. It will be a quest our children and our children's children, may it be so, all follow and all seek out. Today we have the chance to discuss for a while, find wisdom in, and find part of the quest fulfilled in Parsha number 28, the 28th subdivision of the Torah, which is found in chapters 14 and 15 of the book that the world knows as Leviticus. It is actually called Vayikra, and the book is about the calling of the Creator of the universe upon us individually and upon mankind specifically and generally. Welcome to everybody. Please, if you would drop me a little note, let's know who you are, where you're listening from, and any comments or questions you may have. Let's talk a little bit about Parsha number 28, Metzora, Leviticus 14:1 through the end of the end of chapter 15. And I call this particular Parsha, which is a significant one, as they all are, but this has its unique significance and may raise above most. This is called the Parsha of Restoration Protocol. It starts out, Zot tiye Torat HaMetzora b'yom tohoratu. These are the protocols, the processes for the day in which the Metzora is restored, finds this place of restoration. So this Parsha is going to be introducing us to restoration protocols. We are all in need of restoration. We will learn that quickly, hopefully. We will learn that powerfully and never forget that it is not some other people out there that need restoration. It is not some other culture, some other ethnicity, some other ideology, some other group of people. It's us standing in the need of restoration. What would it look like if we were whole? What would it look like if our lives emanated Kedusha, holiness of the energy of heaven? What would it look like if we had all the attributes exhibiting, working in us of the Holy One Himself? And not that we were Him, but that we were having His attributes active in us. What would it look like if we were whole? What would it look like if we could be restored? Can we be restored to the Edenic plan? Can we be restored to wholeness and wellness and shalom and simcha, joy, and tikva, hope, and to emunah, which is that essence of carrying a life force that the Western world thinks of as faith? What would it be? What would it look like in your life, my beloved ones, my friends? What would it look like in your life if you were whole? If you were not just saved or not just in some sort of a religious institution, fellowship, or not just under the teachings of some ministry or creed? What if indeed you were made whole? What if you became an integer, a whole person, an echad that was actually emanating the way you were designed to emanate, living the way you were designed to live, speaking the truth, the wisdom in the ways of the tone of voice and with the power and the impact you were supposed to have, that you were created to have? What if you were back to the garden? What if you were living out of garden soil? and in garden mindsets with breathing garden air. What if you live that way? Well, this is what we're talking about in our quest, and this is the protocols of restoration. Everything in the Torah, particularly with regard to the era of the tabernacle, which we are now in, everything in the era of Emmanuel, as it's evidenced by the last part of the book of Exodus and the beginning, all through the book of Leviticus, is designed to take us into this realm where every picture tells a story. Messianic interpretation is applied to it. It's true on the surface, but if the surface cannot touch your life because of the circumstances you live in, if the surface level cannot touch your life, the Messianic interpretation rules that Messiah followed are that you will find it somewhere else. Do not kill does not have its place in your life because you don't have weapons and you don't desire to kill anybody. Let's go deeper then to Messianic interpretation. He says, but if you even have malice toward your brother in your heart, if you have an offense, if you have anger, if you speak negative words about him, if you speak negative words, angry words, rants to him, then yes, if that happens, then you have also been touched by this word. So the Messianic interpretation is deeper than the surface level, although it contains the truth of the surface level. So what it would be the Messianic interpretation of these instructions from Leviticus 14 and 15, the protocols of restoration. Let's go back and before we get too deep into that, let's consider where we are. We're in Sefer Vayikra, the third Sefer, the middle book of Torah. Middle book of this 5-part revelation stream. And the theme of this book is the call of the bridegroom to his bride to come, be holy as I am holy, be an emitter, an exuder, a vessel of Kedusha, even as I, he would say, the Holy One says, even as I am holy, a vessel of Kedusha. The Kedusha discourse is the part of Sefer Vayikra we're in now. It began at chapter 10, verse 8. It will continue all the way through chapter 24, verse 9. As I like to tell you, the Kedusha discourse is so important. It is the longest, free-flowing, uninterrupted discourse of divine speech, creator speak, in any holy writ, especially in the Torah or the New Testament, or as people call it, or the prophets. This is the longest continuously running episode of divine speech. And it's going to take us somewhere. I haven't really discussed this yet, but I will begin to discuss it because we're getting closer to where it's taking us. This Kedusha discourse is designed to take us to what I call the love chapter, chapter 19. And you may know it by virtue of some of its more familiar aspects. Love your neighbor as yourself, or as you yourself have experienced love. Love your neighbor. That's going to be a key verse in the love chapter, but it is a bigger context. And to understand what loving the neighbor means, you need to know the entire context of Leviticus 19. Now, we're not there yet, but we're being built up, being made ready for the imminence of the love chapter. If we want to understand what being holy as the Holy One is holy will look like, it will mean we will have to embrace the protocols of restoration to where we can actually begin to flow in the wisdom and the guidance and the instructions of the love chapter, chapter 19. We'll get to chapter 19 in a few weeks, but right now we're going to talk about the preparation for getting us ready to even understand what that might mean. More than a creed, more than a theology, but a lifestyle of loving, a lifestyle of being holy as he is holy in real time, in real circumstances of life, in real family life, in real workplace life, in real community life, in real personal devotional life as well. All those factors being holy as he is holy, being a Kedusha bearer as he is a Kedusha emitter. Well, this week, as we've kind of alluded to, the sub-theme of the Be Holy as I Am Holy plan and the Kedusha discourse in general is the essential elements and critical phases of restoration, healing and restoration. Arukah in Hebrew, arukah, healing and restoration. Do you want that? Do you want that for your family, to your children? Do you want that for yourself? Do you want it for your children, your wife, your husband? Do you want it for your household? Do you want it for your neighborhood? Do you want restoration, healing and restoration? Aruka. May Aruka begin to flow in you. May it be awakened in you. May the Aruka of the Holy One begin to flow into your life and have fruit and manifestations one day at a time as we build and build to the love chapter. Well, the illustrative case in point for the protocols and critical phases of Aruka that the Holy One wants to teach us, the picture that he wants to show us is the picture of Metzora. English Bibles somehow like to call him the leper. It's a picture, and it's going to be true with regard to the leper or the Metzora. We'll talk about the difference between a leper and a Metzora perhaps in these many discussions or in other discussions. But whatever you want to call him right now, he uses this picture. It's kind of like he did in the Mishpatim discourse of Exodus 18 when he started to tell us how to think like he thinks as opposed to think like slaves think. Egyptian slaves might think. And so he began by studying, if you acquire a Hebrew servant, and we say, we're never going to do that. We don't want to do that. That's not really applicable to us. And we'll also say about this, the picture, the illustration you've chosen to use, the metaphor you've chosen to use is not one we'll ever deal with. He says, I know. We're going to address this issue with you because there's deeper messianic interpretations to everything that I'm going to tell you. Every picture tells a story, and you will be able to receive it as and when you're ready. So, we have to understand, before we talk about restoration protocols, why we perhaps, I perhaps, need to have restoration. Why we are still in need of restoration. Why we're not where we want to be yet. Why, as Shaul of Tarsus said, I do not consider myself to have attained, but I press forward, reaching for the high prize, the high calling. You see, we're in a process of restoration, and we are being called into deeper levels of restoration. Why? Well, with regard to the surface level of the text, and as it applies to us, we'll see how it might apply. As it applies at the text level, what the people that are receiving this download of wisdom came recently out of a house of bondage, out of Egypt in particular. And as we are in this season of Passover and unleavened bread and remembrance and telling the story again of our great redemption, we're reminded that we're not far removed from whips and screaming strangers who hate us. We're not far removed from wounds and scars. We're not far removed from extreme survival mode when we were in a constant state of turmoil and tragedy and potential death. When it was every man and every woman for himself or herself. And we could trust no one. Back in those days, wasn't that long ago, when we could depend upon no one. When we dared not care about anyone because they could either betray us under compulsion, or we could just lose them to the toils and the trials of hard labor. We could trust no one in that era. We could depend upon no one. We dared care about no one. We had to put up protective walls around us personally and implement extremely narcissistic, antisocial defense mechanisms just to survive. We adapted cynicism and sarcasm and beast-likeness in our behaviors and in our moods. We adopted suspicion and accusation and deception, hiding things as our approach. We were like a dog who'd been beat too much. And so we adapted dog, beast-like tendencies of self-defense. We didn't come out of Egypt healthy. We didn't come out of Egypt as healthy people. We didn't come out of Egypt as functional families. We didn't come out of Egypt or bondage with a vision for a wholesome community. We came out in extreme survival mode, and we are still suffering under the scars and the wounds of that. Even at Sinai, we need restoration. Oh, beloved, it's not just the slaves of Egypt 3,000 years ago that need restoration. We've all had our houses of bondage. We've all had our seasons of extreme survival mode. We've all had to learn who not to trust, how we couldn't trust anyone, couldn't depend on anyone, couldn't dare to care about anyone, how we had to put up protective walls and implement extremely narcissistic antisocial defense mechanisms, how we had to adopt cynicism and sarcasm, or we chose to because it was safer, it felt more safe to do those things, to be cynical, to be sarcastic, to be beast-like, to be suspicious of everyone, to accuse everyone of whatever we're projecting onto them that we just fear that might happen to us, and then to be deceptive in the way we respond. Oh, we are not as they are. We were not. Will not be without the Holy One's help. Healthy people. We will not have and be able to form functional families. We will not have a vision, much less be able to implement wholesome community life. But something changed between the exodus from Egypt, the leaving of Egypt, and our time at Sinai that we're talking about now in Leviticus chapter 14. What has happened? We are living in very different times. The tabernacle, structures patterned after the heavenly courts and the chambers of the Creator of the universe, has been built and furnished and staffed, and it has now been divinely indwelt. And a great RSVP, Responde s'il vous plaît, has been issued. Invitation has been issued to all of us to come and abide with Him. Come and commune with Him. Come and be healed and restored by Him. The great cloud of His presence covers this great structure in our midst of our camp, and His glory, His weightiness, His power, His majesty fills that place and the area around it from stem to stern. This is the era of Emmanuel, God with us. That's what's changed. Now, how will it change us? That's the question. This is the greatest era of Emmanuel, of God with us, since the Garden of Eden. We are now courtiers, or called to be, and become courtiers of the beauty realm, travelers between the realm of earth and the realm of heaven. And now in this era of Emmanuel, of God with us, He is empowering us. Our Creator is empowering us to envision ourselves not only as we really are, which is shocking enough, still in need of restoration, but He also envisions us in this era of Emmanuel to see us, ourselves, as He created and designed us to be. So we don't just see ourselves as we are, because we would cry and run away. We see ourselves as He created us, designs us, and desires for us to become holy as He is holy. How would you look? How do you think you would look if you were whole? How do you think you would talk to other people? How do you think you would interact? How do you think you would handle difficult situations and challenges? How do you think you'd handle what would normally be an offense if you were whole? If your family was a healthy, functional family as He intended, how would you handle conflicts that normally happen in life? How would you handle the mission of life and making money, earning money to live on, and then being a good neighbor to others? How would you handle these things differently if you were whole, to mom in Hebrew, if you were an integer, as He, the Holy One, is an integer, a fully, properly integrated and aligned person? Now, we have three aspects that need to align, and that's the neshama, which is the God-breathed breath of eternal life. This is the eternal spirit within us. Genesis 2:7, the Holy One breathed this into Adam, and it's in every human being. We have the neshama. It's not part of our body. It's not we're connected to it. So we have the neshama, we have the nephesh, we have the will, the mind, and emotions, which is sort of an interface between the neshama, the eternal spirit, and what we're going to talk about next, which is the third element, which is the flesh, the basar. The Hebrew word is basar, and the idea is this is physical, tangible, mortal flesh. So we have neshama, the eternal spirit, that is connected to the Holy One in the eternal realm. And we have the basar, the flesh, which is just an animal-like creature down here on the earth. And we have this between them, we have the soul, we have the mind, the will, the emotions, which is the interface. That's how the neshama, that's how the eternal connects with the mortal, through the mind, through the will, through the emotions. So we have this idea of being whole by virtue of having our neshama be in lead, as opposed to having the flesh be the one that does all the screaming and makes all the choices for us. Most people let their flesh make the choices, their hormones, their instincts, their attitudes, or they let their nefesh make decisions. They're pseudo-intellectual. They try to think things through everything. They try to reason or use logic through everything. But the neshama uses divine wisdom, divine energy to heal and fix every problem. Well, if we're whole, we will bear witness of the neshama's headship over this triune part of who we are. That will mean that his headship is visible in our demeanor, the way we present ourselves to the world, our appearance, what we choose to wear, how we choose to... Do we look like we're needy by the virtue? I don't mean physically. We maybe look like we're needy because we wear raggedy clothes. I'm more talking about we want attention-getting clothes. Our demeanor, our appearance, our words that we use, the vocabulary, the tone of voice, the behaviors. Are we bearing witness of the neshama's headship, or the flesh's headship? Are we, as our demeanor, our words, our tone of voice, our vocabulary, that of the flesh, or is it that of the spirit? What about our behaviors? Are they of the flesh or of the spirit? Of the reactions that we have to situations and people, what are they evidencing? Well, we are supposed to be evidencing the wholeness, of moving closer and closer to this tamam state, this integer state, where we are fully integrated, neshama in the lead, neshama taking the authority, and then the nefesh and the basar following in sequence along, in accordance with the neshama's direction. And if that is the case, how do you know? How do you know if your neshama is taking the lead? Well, it starts with yirat Adonai, the fear of the Holy One, it calls in the English language. The sense of reverence, the sense of knowledge, understanding of who he is and who we are. Yirat Adonai. And then Ahavat Adonai, which is the actual love of the Holy One, the actual being caught up in the beauty and the majesty of who he is, and desiring to be nothing besides his servant, nothing besides his agent in this creation. So Yirat Adonai and Ahavat Adonai are the first telltale signs of that witness the neshama's headship in our lives. And then beyond that, we see humility, self-denying commitment, service of others and of the Holy One, service of the holy things of the creation, of the kadosh things, avodah for God, for fellow man, and for creation. We see shalom, we see long-suffering or patience. We see simcha, joy. We see tikva, which is hope. We see emunah, which is the sense that we're carrying such an important life force that we submit our self-will to nurturing and promoting that life force. We see Hokmah as being one of the evidences, the witnesses of the neshama's leadership. Wisdom and a practical skill in approaching situations and making the situation better, not just cursing it or causing more animosity or making it worse. We see chesed, or loving kindness, or covenant faithfulness. All these words mean together. We see zedekah, which is doing things the way that brings about the best result. We see mishpat, which is doing things which bring about the plan of the Holy One in the long run. And we see emet, which is that which is connecting to that which is eternal, not looking at things only as life now, but as what is best for our bloodline and he restoring and making tikkun for the bloodline in the past, but also in the future, and leaving a progeny, a breadcrumb trail of life for those who come behind us. And we see another evidence, another witness of the neshama's headship is we see beauty arising from our ashes. Tiferet would be the Hebrew word. Well, this empowering vision of how we could be, or what we were designed to be, how we were designed to look and behave and interact with the world, Its empowering vision comes to us when we approach the glorious light of the Holy One, when we seek Him, when we're on this quest and we keep taking practical steps into His presence, into the light of His countenance. And when we see that, it makes us hunger and thirst for things that were presently, or previously at least, unseen. Things like are mentioned in Psalm 89:14. Zedek umishpat, righteousness and justice, it says in English. Zedek umishpat are the foundation paving stones of your throne. As we're coming close to Him, we begin to see it. It's not just what we want. It's not just it's not vengeance. It's not a sense of self-righteousness that we're looking for. It's Zedek umishpat. This is the foundation paving of His throne. And then it goes further in Psalm 89:14. It says, Chesed ve'emet, mercy or loving kindness and truth, eternal truth that stays the same no matter what circumstances are. That's what must precede an encounter with your face, your presence. Well, we have been invited to our King's come be with me place. His heaven meets earth place. We get a chance to go there, but we have a serious corresponding pilgrim responsibility. Discernment of the four realms. The Holy One has told us previously, as the beginning of this Kedusha discourse, you are to badal. You are to form a red line that keeps separated the holy, the kadosh, that which is diffused with the Kedusha energy of heaven, from the unholy, the chol, that which is infused with earthly corruption and toxicity. And you are to badal between the tahor, that which is balanced and in alignment, in the shama, nefesh, basar. You're to badal that and separate that from that which is tameh, that which is fragmenting and corrupting and decaying and disintegrating and causing division and harm upon the earth. The Holy One's manifest presence. It's such a beautiful thing. And we grasp it, if nothing else, through His words. But we hope there's more. We know there is more. As we get into His words, He reveals Himself to us. His manifest presence in our midst changes absolutely everything. It supercharges the atmosphere. It raises the bar and the stakes. It activates the potential in us. Redefines for us what is possible, what is normal. But it also exposes in us everything that is on the raw, shakat, Hamas, evil, corruption, violence, and cruelty spectrum. We see where we have spots, wrinkles, lesions, wounds, scars. We see where we have holes in our soul. That vision is frightening to us. We see where we have surrendered our souls, our minds, and our approach to life to cultural or ethnocentric or ideological or philosophical approaches to life instead of spiritual approaches to life. We see where we've accepted our flesh's desire for voyeuristic pleasure and temporal stimulation we've surrendered our soul, our spirits, and our minds to that. We see where we've allowed fleshly appetites and emotions to take over, and the flesh is definitely in control of this three-part train. It should be the nefesh and the neshama in charge. We see where we have succumbed to serpentine cynicism and rebellion and called that into our identity, our personality. But the light coming from the Mishkan now is incredibly bright, and the fire that He sent upon the brazen altar is insanely hot, and it is good. It is what we've dreamed about since the garden. This era of Emmanuel is for us, is waiting for us at such a time as this. But we must adapt and rise to the challenge. There are significant zones of grave danger. There are valleys of the shadow of death through which we must pass along the way to our national destiny, along the way to our becoming whole, as we've talked about. Along our way, our pathway of Arucha, of restoration. You can ask Nadav and Abihu about the holes, about the danger zones. You can ask the Metzora that we talk about those things. The great Kedusha discourse is to us like the book of Proverbs, the Mishle, was for Solomon to his children. Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs, most of it, or accumulated it at least, for his children, for the sons he was raising up as princes, ambassadors of the kingdom of Israel, the United Kingdom of Israel under Solomon. The idea was to train up his sons, his princes, to be able to navigate and successfully transcend this world's encounters with folly, with Ra, with Shakhat, with Hamas, and to act as king's representatives throughout all those things. Just as Solomon wrote or accumulated or gathered this book of wisdom for that purpose for his sons, so the Holy One has given us the book of Leviticus and the great Kedusha discourse at its heart. Why? To train us up as his kingdom of priests, as royal ambassadors, to navigate this world's inevitable encounters with the realm of Tumah and the realm of Chol, the uncleanness and profanity. I call it the kryptonite for Kedoshim that we all will face. And to give us that lead shield, as we know in the Superman story, was the secret to his overcoming the kryptonite. I want to go into this issue of restoration, Arukah. You see, beloved, contrary to what the world would tell you, or the political realm would tell you, or the religious realm would tell you, there is hope for the hopeless, and there is a home for the homeless. Prodigals and outcasts of this world can be restored, can return to the places and the families and the communities where and to whom they belong. And they can be closer and closer and closer to this thing called wholeness. Parsha Metzora, which is what we're in this week, introduces not only to the promise and hope for the hopeless and the homeless, but to the process and protocol of Arukah, of restoration. God knows that we need restoration. He knows that men will always need restoration. He knows that all men are Metzorim or Metzoras. We're all lepers in the sense that that's why this is the image that he draws, the metaphor that he uses to teach us, to get us ready for the love chapter. We're all that. We're all in need of restoration, and we need to know there is a process and a protocol. Every picture will tell a story about the 4 phases of restoration that he has ordained for mankind to get us ready to handle the love chapter. There is restoration available to us in the realm of the personal lives, spiritual life, emotional lives, social lives, relational lives, and civic lives. Yes, beloved, you and I and everyone need restoration. We need protocols. We need to know there's hope. We need to know there's somewhere to go, some way to overcome these challenges of the slavery, of the bondage, the wounds and the scars that we have endured, the defense mechanisms we have put up, the boundaries, the walls we put up. There are ways to have those healed. This week, Torah will paint a detailed picture for us and show us the way it can happen. The 4 stages of transition and transformation. So, in week number 5 of Sefer Vayikra, and week number 3 of the Grand Kedusha Discourse, he gives us our practical guide to the journey of transformation. There are 3 words I want to introduce you to. I've already mentioned one of them, Arukah, restoration. I want to introduce you to another word which we've talked about before, we'll talk about again, tikkun, which is usually translated as fixing something that's broken. So Arukah, restoration, requires the fixing of something that's broken. You can't really have a so significant Arukah, restoration in place, unless you have the process for fixing what is broken. It doesn't just automatically pop. I'm sorry about the noise. It probably didn't sound good over the microphone. But the process of fixing something that's broken, tikkun, is an important element of Arukah. And the other important element of Arukah is tahara. It's a Hebrew word that usually is translated cleanness or purity. It has really little to do with either. It's not a ceremonial law. Tahara is a state, is a flowing of wholeness and wellness. Tahara is bringing the whole person into proper alignment. Neshama in the head, Nefesh as being the connected portion, and Basar being the tail that follows along and does the will of the Neshama as communicated to it by the Nefesh. Spirit, soul, and mind and body. That is how we learn to be prepared. If we come into alignment, then we can carry Kedusha. We can carry the energy of heaven into earth. Tikkun, Aruka, Tahara. These three. I want you to get a vision, if you would, beloved, that you too can have Tikkun. The Holy One can help you fix what's broken. He can make you restored. He can make your children or your loved ones that you've lost or feel estranged from restored. You may have to change as well, but there will be some restoration protocols that he gives us. And he can reconnect you back with his tahara, his wholeness, and his alignment, proper alignment. In weeks 1 and 2 of the Kedusha Discourse, we learned that to make the most of this era of Emmanuel, of the presence and the availability of the Holy One, as we've searched for him on this quest, to make the most of this era requires us to significantly step up our game, starting with our God paradigm, how we view God. If we view him as some sort of a angry, petulant, easy to offend, judgmental and critical being that's just out to cause us trouble, we've got trouble. That's what we just project onto the Holy One our imagery of mean men, kings and political leaders and military leaders or teachers that we haven't got along with. If we project that onto maybe a father figure that was not the best in the world, if we project all that onto the Holy One, we're going to have a hard time embracing him, getting close to him, and letting him go take us through the restoration protocols. So he gives us a new God paradigm. Merciful, slow to anger, loving, faithful to covenant, keeping covenant with generations and generations. We see the new God paradigm being given to us before we get started. And then God conscious awareness that he is with us. He is near us. He is not aloof and away and hard to reach. He is interested in our lives and involved in our lives. And then having self-awareness. We just had a little lightning flash over here. I want to make sure I'm still going. You may hear some thunder in the background. Well, we're learning these things, and we learned that his wisdom and the era of Emmanuel has to affect our thoughts, our ways of approaching life, our speech, our mood, our tone of voice, our demeanor, our appearance, our interactions, our relationships, our business transactions, our priorities, our agendas, our focus, our reactions, and our behaviors. So I want to get a little bit further before we go too deep into this. Now, this week, the issue is the Metzora.